welcome to Kids Church. Now today we're learning that Jesus is prepared to do very hard and difficult things. And in a little bit we're going to come to a few illustrations. But first of all, let me ask you, have you had to do something really difficult, something that you really didn't want to do? Think about it. I don't know. Maybe you didn't really want to go for an injection and, you had to, and that was really difficult. Or maybe just eating your vegetables. Some people find that difficult. What about moving houses? That's a difficult thing to do as well. I've just done that and it's like, so hard to decide and to pack everything and to unpack. It's a lot of work and, you don't really want to do that, but you do it. Doing your homework. What about going to bed on time? Really difficult. Have you tried and do something to avoid doing these? What's your tactic to avoid eating your vegetables? What's your tactic to delay going to bed? I'm sure you have tactics plenty. In our Bible story, Jesus didn't avoid what he had to do, even though he didn't really want to do it. Jesus, you see, he does difficult things. Let's see what happens. But before we read the Bible, you need to know what the hard thing Jesus had to do was. It didn't happen in the verses we'll read today, but Jesus knew what was coming. And in today's story, he was really stressed about it. So it's kind of like, I have this balloon and I push this pin into the balloon. It hasn't happened yet, but you know what will happen if I do that. What are you going to do? I'm sure some of you, as I inch the pin closer and closer, you probably maybe have covered your ears in expectation. You're going to brace yourself. Oh, that's going to pop the balloon. Because you knew what was coming. So you prepared yourself because you knew there's going to be a loud pop about to happen. Now, we know that a balloon pop is not very pleasant. It's noisy and usually we don't expect it. So we might tense up, cover our ears if we knew that what it's coming. You see, what Jesus knew was coming was much worse than a balloon pop. Jesus knew he was going to die for what everyone else in the whole world had done wrong. He'd even be separated from God for a little while he took in all our punishment. And that's really scary. But Jesus does the hard thing. Let's see what he prayed about when he was preparing for this hard thing. Now, in our story, Jesus experienced a kind of a tug of war in his heart. Do you know what a tug of war is? Well, on the one hand, there was what he wanted to do and what he was willing to do. Now, as you pulled in the tug of war, it shows you what Jesus wanted to do, and then it shows you what Jesus was willing to do. And you can try and resist being pulled forwards and backwards, but it's going to be feeling that tug of war. And that's exactly what Jesus felt in his heart, that tug of war between what he wanted to do and what he was willing to do. Jesus really didn't want to go to the cross. He asked God to take that suffering away from him. But he also said he wanted to do God's will. And he wanted God's will to be done, and that he would do it. Jesus does hard things, so we're also willing to do the difficult things. Let's think about hard things that we might need to do for God. So let's listen to what happens in the story. It's from Matthew 26, verses 36 to 46, I think. Then Jesus went with his disciple to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee. Grief and anguish came over him, and he said to them, "The sorrow in my heart is so great that it almost crushes me. Stay here and keep watch with me." See, that's that tug of war we were just talking about. He went a little further on, threw himself face down on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, take this cup of suffering from me. Yet, not what I want, but what you want." Again, that tug of war in his heart. Then he returned to the three disciples and found them asleep. And he said to Peter, "How is it that you three were not able to keep watch with me even for 1 hour? Keep watch and pray that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once more, Jesus went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cup of suffering cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done." He returned once more and found the disciple asleep. They could not keep their eyes open. Again, Jesus left them and went away and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he returned to his disciple and said, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be handed over to the power of sinful men. Get up, let us go. Look, here is the man who is betraying me." So Jesus knew exactly what he was there for, but several times he asked God to take away this cup of suffering. And I've got, as an illustration, if you want, a cup of suffering, because he's called that what he had to face, a cup of suffering. So let's imagine right now this cup of lovely fresh water, lovely. And that's refreshing as well. But it wouldn't be so good to drink, after if we add some salt to it, would it? Because salted water is not that great. So imagine that if you drank your salt water, just imagine, illustration, imagine that if you drank your salt water, somewhere, someone in another country, someone you don't even know, would be healed. How would you feel about drinking your water now if you knew that drinking the salt water, someone somewhere would be healed? Places in context, doesn't it? Now, I'm not going to ask you to drink salt water. I am not asking you to do that. And actually, it probably wouldn't heal anybody. But it's the way you feel about drinking yucky salt water. That would be just a tiny picture of how Jesus felt about going to the cross. Even though he didn't want to suffer, he was willing to do it for us because he loves us. And that was the only way to heal our friendship with him. Now, God is not going to ask us to die on the cross either, but he may ask us to do things we're not comfortable with. You see, when Jesus faced a situation that was really difficult, his response was to talk to God about it. And he was honest about his feelings. But at the same time, he was committed to doing what God wanted. So let's think a moment. Sometimes, for example, telling the truth is actually quite difficult. And it's difficult whether we're telling the truth to our parents or to our teachers, to our friends. And sometimes that's when we need a little bit of help from God to talk to him and say, "Look, I really need to tell the truth, and I don't know why I lied. Maybe that was the easy way out at the time that we could think of, but I don't know how to make things good again, and I need to tell the truth. and I'm a little bit scared, and it's going to be like I'm going to be in trouble because I lied, and asking God for help in that situation, because God will help you by giving you the courage to do it, but God can also prepare the people around you to accept the truth. And yes, you might be in trouble for having lied, but God will help you go through that. So that's something to remember. Any situation that you are faced that's difficult, your response is to talk to God, be honest about your feelings, be committed, tell him that you really want to go God's way, and God will help you. And if you click the button for the Resource Centre, you will find lots of challenges this week, and this week they're involving bubble gum and sweets, lots of fun challenges to have. Have good fun, and I'll see you next week.